instruction. Like our instruction is to chant, but how many times do we have that realization that just by chanting, I can achieve what I'm desiring to achieve, the service of Guru and Vaishnava. We try to see our success in so many different ways. I mean, that's fine, but ultimately, we don't have that much faith in chanting as we should have. Everybody can chant and just perfect their lives. That's what Srila Prabhupada said. Follow the 4 principles, chant your 16 rounds attentively, and I'll take you home. He's promising it. And we try to go for so much fame and glory and name and so many things and so many activities. But then when it comes down to chanting, we just want to get it done and, just go on to do more practical stuff and so many things. So faith, I heard my Guru Maharaj says, comes from service. And with service comes purification, and our faith deepens. So I feel this is like a guiding principle for the whole spiritual life, this verse.
Yeah, I just thought at this moment to put us live on Facebook. So if you're coming into this at this point, we've had a kirtan to start the meeting off from Govinda Dev, and we're discussing the first canto, first chapter, 8th verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, and that's going to be followed by some reports on Gadadhar Pandit, Srivas Thakur, as well as Bhaktivinode Thakur. So if you just joined us, that's what we're in the midst of. So having just heard a commentary from Amrita Sundari, how about her lesser half there is sitting beside her? Lesser half, Ras Vilas?
Same shadow, Prabhuji. First, I want to say happy Grandfather's Day to George Prabhu. It's not Father's, Grandfather's Day for you. So I will just add a couple of examples, Prabhu. As Amrita stated, this is a very powerful verse. How in our movement, ISKCON movement, we see so many wonderful devotees, Maharajas, successful only because they just blindly followed Srila Prabhupada's order. And one such example is Shyam Sundar Prabhu and Malati Mataji. I think Malati Mataji, their daughter was pretty small, like a month old or something. And Srila Prabhupada said, you have to go to London to start a center and preaching there, I think within a span of a week or so. And they did not question anything. And they just went to London. And then after that, what happened, what miracles happened, we all know. And there's another incident where Srila Prabhupada was traveling in a train with his Western disciples, actually, and some Indian disciples also. But anyway, they were talking with some villager. Srila Prabhupada was talking with some villager with very interestingly. And then the next station came and the train stopped and the villager got down, and then Srila Prabhupada told one of his disciples, you also get down with him. I said, why, Srila Prabhupada? Because you have to start a center there in his village. So that was the faith and belief of Srila Prabhupada's disciples. And we see Caru Prabhu also, following Srila Prabhupada's order and what he has done, in Utah, which is a very, very challenging place in terms of, conservation, and of course, family values are high. So as this verse states, we have to have full faith in our spiritual master, and Vaishnava, we have to serve them. Without service, we cannot develop that intimacy. We cannot understand the deep meaning of every verse or every lecture in scriptures. We have to have mercy of Vaishnava and then Guru Parampara.
Thank you very much, Goel family. Onkar has applied for initiation by Radhanath Swami. He's waiting for the approval of that, but he's already a key member of our Salt Lake City community, following a PhD program at University of Utah, renting a room at the temple. But how many people would just rent a room at the temple and dedicate themselves to academic studies and not do any particular devotional service? But honestly, in addition to his academic studies and raising the money he needs to pay the rent, Ankar is a fully functional member of the community there. I mean, he greets guests. He can't do the artis, he can't dress the deities, but he supports, he assists any way he can. He cooks. Honestly, along with Rishabh and Govinda Bhakta, I offer my obeisances to Ankar as a fully participatory member of the community there. So what insights can you share with us on this verse, Ankar?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. So, like Amrita Machari told that it was like a secret of success that Prabhupada mentioned the purport that the pleasure of spiritual master is the goal of life. So that inspires me also, as Prabhuji told that there are many instances of Srila Prabhupada's disciples that they went and did everything for their spiritual master. So that is a very inspiring for me, that if I could do something in my life that could please Srila Prabhupada or a spiritual master, that would be a great thing for me. So that's very inspirational.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Very heartfelt. Let's move to Pavana and Radhesham out in Tooele. Any additional insights into the subject of service and submission to the Guru based on our verse today? I'll unmute you there.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. It reminds me of when you go through initiated, you agree to certain things that you will not do, the 4 principles, and things that you will do. And you agree to those, and you have to be sincere about that. And as you go on past your initiation, your realization and your love of God just intensifies as you practice what you promised.
Anything from that guy sitting to your left there?
Guy sitting next to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sages appointed Suta Goswami because he showed in himself as a bona fide spiritual master.
Mm.
So that's what we learn. So I didn't prepare for telling anything, so just something like
Initiation means the beginning. Your spiritual life begins officially at initiation, because that's when you establish your link to the chain of disciplic succession. The mercy comes down to you from guru to disciple, and then you link up at initiation, and then with that link, then your service goes directly back through the chain of disciplic succession. I think in some cases, people think of initiation as an endpoint. They think of it as a goal. If I could just get initiated, if I could just get my spiritual name, if I could just go around telling people who my guru is, swapping guru narrations. That's really missing the point. You shouldn't apply or aspire for initiation unless you're really going to knuckle down and really become a shining example of Krishna consciousness at that time of initiation. Komal, any thoughts on the subject?
Yes, one that I know this is related mainly for a spiritual leader, but I think anything that you want to learn, you should trust your guru, because without that, you will not reach anywhere. Once you have somebody as a guru, you become submissive and you trust them blindly. It's a little difficult in today's world because we tend to question everything. So it takes so much. I'm sure for all of these people, it's taken so much belief and trust. Like how they give the examples, Srila Prabhupada said, you just get down here and you've got to start a unit here for that villager. To just blindly accept and say yes is so difficult, and it takes so much from inside. So I think it's a long path and we have to prepare ourselves for that. But I have a question as well on this. In the translation, it says that therefore you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from there. Is there a specific scientific message also that they are trying to say over here, or I'm not sure why this term was used?
Kapil, why is that word scientific used in the purport which you read, my man?
Last week we read about it, and in 1.7 it talks that when the sages, they are glorifying Sud Goswami, they say that definitely you know the absolute, but you also know the abstract. And this knowledge has come through the succession. So you have learned it. It's not like there are a lot of people, they say that I'm self-taught and we read the books every day and this is how we got the... And when people say that I'm self-taught, we all know that how the quality of the guru, when I say that I'm self-taught. But I think the scientific piece is, it comes from the disciplic succession, and he knows the physics as well as the metaphysics. That's what we discussed last time, the absolute and the abstract of who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it's also not knowing about your stream, it's also knowing about other tradition, so that you have the ability to debate both sides.
Science comes from scio, Latin, which means to know. So if you want to know things, you have various tools at your disposal. And probably the least powerful are our senses. Probably the least effective method. It's not ineffective, but it's like crawling as opposed to flying. So the crawling method for knowing things is what you see, taste, smell. And you can enhance that through microscopes and telescopes, special things to amplify your oral perception. You can expand upon, you can magnify literally the reach of your senses. But because the senses themselves are so essentially weak, even magnification of the senses doesn't really give you a great leg up, a great advantage. So if you're actually scientifically inclined, you're not going to have a bias for empiricism, because that basically disqualifies you as a real science. All the so-called scientists who say, well, if I can't see it, I won't believe it. They're not scientists. They're not taking all the advantage opportunities to know that are available. And the best means of acquiring knowledge is to hear from authorities. Even in the scientific world, if there's someone who's gone further, thought it out more thoroughly, like Einstein or Newton or Galileo, people won't reinvent the wheel, but they'll accept, in a sense, the higher knowledge coming down to them, isn't it? I may not know everything that goes into making a microphone, but if an audio engineer tells me this is a microphone and this is what it does, then I can accept it. I'm never accepting it blindly, because this is an audio engineer. He's had the training, he knows what he's talking about. So I'm not accepting it blindly. He has the bona fides. I don't accept it from a man on the street, but I will accept it from an audio engineer. So science means to accept all the means which are available. So if we have the scripture, which is the infallible word of God, and if we accept that the speaker of the scripture made and created everything, and he knows everything in and out thoroughly, then I can accept that. I can accept that, and it's not blind acceptance. And it is science. Science doesn't always just mean a white coat, a Bunsen burner, and a test tube. That's just one tiny part, and it's the least powerful part of science. And those who limit themselves to that are not really scientists. They're not scientists at all. So blind belief is never called for. In inquiries, if you need to clarify things and crystallize it in your intelligence, then that's encouraged. Arjuna asked so many questions in the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna was very patient and very lovingly answered them. However, there's a point beyond which inquiry just becomes a waste of time. You just ask and ask and ask and ask, and the spiritual master's time is valuable Your time is valuable. So ask questions with the aim of clarifying your vision so that then you can act more precipitously, more convincingly, and more quickly.
Thank you, Kapil, and thank you, Charu Prabhu.
Charu, one thing I want to add is, like, we all talked about the guru and the submissive, like how important for in this particular verse when we talk about Sud Goswami, last 2-3 verses we also talked about that he was free from all vices, he is simple, he has got this knowledge from a scientific method. But one thing that yesterday or day before we were reading in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and when Krishna says evam parampara prapte, when he talks about that this is not the first time I'm sharing this knowledge was being shared previously to the sun god. And then Arjuna, he asked a very intelligent question, and he said that the verse says apram bhavato janam param janma vivastate, and he says that how do I understand that you shared this with the sun god? And when I read the purport few times, I think it was a great realization that sometimes we have this propensity, whenever something that is not fitting in our framework or we don't understand that, we outright challenge that thing. So it also talks about the mood of the disciple. Like there is so much we can achieve if we only focus on the other half. The other half from the disciple perspective is also very important, that he didn't say that, oh, I didn't understand, I don't believe. How can you say that you have taught this to, or you shared this knowledge to? He said that, how would I understand? And that shows his submission. He did the submission in 2nd chapter when he said Karpane Doshopats. But I think it takes to the next level where he says that, how do I understand this? And I think that's also a great quality of a disciple to make it's a good marriage.
Because his aim is to act. The aim is to serve. So he wants, how do I understand it? How do I use this bit of information in such a way as to maximize my service? Sundari Priya, you want to jump in here?
My humble obeisances to all the assembled Vaishnavas here. This verse is definitely namesake for me, Snigdhasya. And so I am trying to, with all your blessings, trying to see if one who is submissive, I'm not sure if I'm namesake. But what this verse really says is all the qualities, pure and simple, Saumya, submissive, obedient, sincere. These are the qualities of a true Vaishnava. And when we associate with those who have this, it kind of reflects on us. So if you serve a master who has these qualities, it is bound to spill on you. Just like if I am a driver, I'm driving a limo for my employer or my owner, I get to experience the driving of the limo. Similarly, if I'm submissive, and I don't own that limo. I don't say that I bought this limo, but I am driving because I'm a driver. I'm taking the association of my master, and those qualities spill over to you. Similarly, so it's a long process, but the learning has to be so simple that one instruction, like everybody explained, like Prabhupada, he didn't contest that, no, I don't have money, how can I preach outside? I have so many kids. But the simple instruction and to love is to serve, and to serve is to please. So these simple things we can do every day. And I think it all boils down to taking personal accountability, and I think chanting your rounds with love and care, knowing that this is the first instruction. I took the vow, and I'm really blessed that Charu Prabhu and Vaibhavi Mataji are such awesome examples for us. Vaibhavi Mataji explained to me initially that Srila Prabhupada gave her one instruction: make our temples beautiful so that the people their hearts get attracted there. Even yesterday in the Rath Yatra, we had some visitors, and they said this temple is so calm, so clean, and we feel like doing meditation here. And I said, you are welcome anytime here. And that other devotees, they came and they're like, your floor is shining. I said, yes, because Mataji put an effort to make sure that we take it for granted, but that simple instruction that she took from her Guru Maharaj is what has been passed to generations, and that that we have to be sincere about it and really show gratitude on a daily basis, that with gratitude all other values come full circle, I think. So that's my limited understanding.
For the Facebook Live people that might be watching or watch in the future, Sundari Priya's name is Snigdha. Her uninitiated name is Snigdha. So that's what we're talking about here. Snigdha. It's how to serve the spiritual master and be an effective instrument for the Lord. Rakesh, your choice. You can talk about Srivas's disappearance or Gadadhar Pandit's appearance, whichever you prefer.
Sure, Prabhuji. I was so first of all, I would like to pray, because this is, I guess, my first official report. So I am actually nervous. So I pray for the mercy of all the Vaishnavas. So I'll start with the Panch Tattva mantra. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. So in this Panch Tattva, the first three, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and Advaita Acharya, they are the three Vishnu Tattva. And Gadadhar Pandit, he is the internal potency of Mahaprabhu, and he is none other than the Srimati Radharani. She appeared as a Gadadhar Pandit in this material world to like help Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in playing his pastimes, and to help him enjoy, because of Mahaprabhu, he is an incarnation of Lord Vishnu, and he wanted to enjoy the mood of the devotees and how devotees love him. So to help in his mood, Srimati Radharani, she also appeared with him as Gadadhar Pandit. And the fifth tattva in this Panch Tattva Mahamantra is Srivas. So Srivas Thakur is the Jeev Tattva. So we'll talk about Srivas Thakur if we will have time, but for now we'll start with Gadadhar Pandit. So Gadadhar Pandit is, as we say, he's none other than Srimati Radharani himself, and he was born in Navdvip, and he was very close friend with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was called Nimai Pandit. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's name when he was a child was Nimai Pandit, and they both used to go to the same school. And Nimai Pandit, he was very naughty, like that's what they say. He was very naughty and very proud young scholar. He used to debate with people, and then he used to enjoy defeating people in those debates. So he will question about their knowledge, and then he will defeat them. But Gadadhar Pandit, from his childhood age itself, he was very sincere and very, very sober, and he used to try to stay away from Nimai Pandit because he did not want to get in those debates and like challenging people. He did not like that. So, but they were going to they used to go to the same school, and there are many pastimes that they shared. So before we go into the pastimes, I want to just share a little bit about, since we are talking about the importance of Guru in the verse that we read. So Gadadhar Pandit, he was initiated by very exalted devotee Pundrik Vidyanidhi Prabhu. So once when Pundrik Vidyanidhi Prabhu was visiting in Navdvip, so when Gadadhar Pandit, he used to go to meet all the devotees, whoever used to come. He really loved the association of devotees and gurus. So he used to go and attend all the associations that were possible. And when he met with Pundrik Vidyanidhi Prabhu, he had a doubt about his being an exalted devotee, because he was focusing on the outer appearance. And Pundrik Vidyanidhi Prabhu, he was wearing like he was sitting on a kingly throne and chewing pan, the betel leaf, and he was wearing like jewels and very expensive clothes. So Gadadhar Pandit thought in his mind that he seems to be a person who is very much engaged in sense gratification, or maybe he is not that exalted devotee. And he visited there with another devotee. I'm forgetting his name. So Mukunda Datta Prabhu. Sorry, I had to write notes because I knew I will forget some of the names. So Mukunda Datta Prabhu was another very exalted devotee. So he could read that doubt in Gadadhar Pandit's mind. And to clarify that doubt, Mukunda Datta Prabhu recited a verse, a shloka from Bhagavad Gita. And after Pundrik Vidyanidhi Prabhu heard that verse, he immediately like lost all his composure, and he showed so many ecstatic qualities of an exalted devotee. His hair were raised, and he started rolling on the floor, and seeing all those qualities. Gadadhar Pandit felt really bad that he was doubting Pundrik Prabhu, and then he got so much impressed, he eventually got initiated from Pundrik Mahaprabhu, Pundrik Vidyanidhi Prabhuji. So Gadadhar Pandit got initiation from them. And one of the pastime is that when Mahaprabhu he went to Gaya and got initiated from Ishwar Puri, he was in a different state, and Mahaprabhu's mother, Shachi Mataji, she used to get scared sometimes because she was not able to she didn't know how to pacify the Mahaprabhu. He would just start crying and looking for Lord Krishna. So one day he asked, Mahaprabhu asked Gadadhar Pandit that where can I find Krishna? Where is Krishna? And to pacify him, Gadadhar Pandit thought, what should he say? And then he said that Krishna is everywhere. He is in your heart. And after hearing that, Mahaprabhu started shedding tears on his chest. And he said, I want to tear my heart and see Krishna in my heart. So Gadadhar Pandit helped Mahaprabhu pacifying that day. And upon seeing that, Sachi Mataji, she ordered Gadadhar Pandit that you can pacify Nimai, so I want you to stay with him forever, never leave him. And Gadadhar Pandit, he accepted that order, and he made sure that he will never leave Mahaprabhu. So that's why when Mahaprabhu moved to Puri for after taking sannyas, Gadadhar Pandit also took Kshetra sannyas with him. And Kshetra sannyas is like when they take a vow that I will not go out of this particular Kshetra or this particular region. So he always made sure that he is with Mahaprabhu. And one day Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar Pandit, they were sitting at a hill which is called Chatak Parvat, which is considered same as Govardhan Hill. So Mahaprabhu dug the deities of Gopinath, Srimati Radharani, and Lalite that day, and those deities are still worshipped in Tota Gopinath near the Yameshwar Tota. And Mahaprabhu ordered Gadadhar Pandit that you should make sure that you are serving these deities, and you make sure that the service is done properly. And when Mahaprabhu returned to Vrindavan from Puri, Gadadhar Pandit was so he was very sad. He wanted to go to Vrindavan with Mahaprabhu, and he was in immense grief. He even wanted to break his vow that he will vow of his Kshetra Sannyas. He wanted to stay with Mahaprabhu, but Mahaprabhu convinced him and asked him, ordered him that he has to stay there and serve Tota Gopinath in the Tota Gopinath temple. But Gadadhar Pandit loved Mahaprabhu so much that he was still in grief, and after Mahaprabhu like completed his Leela in this material world and left for left for Vishnu Lok, Gadadhar Pandit was so sad and he could not bear this pain that he started getting old really fast because of that grief. And even though he was just 47 years old, but he turned so old that it was really difficult for him to serve Tota Gopinath. And there is this pastime that the Lord Tota Gopinath, he because he was so pleased with Gadadhar Pandit and his service that he actually sat down to accept his service in the sitting position, because Gadadhar Pandit was not able to stand and serve. So that's how exalted devotee Gadadhar Pandit is. But even then, he still continued lamenting and his grief of leaving Mahaprabhu, that he lived only 1 year after Mahaprabhu left this world. And he actually he entered into the deities of Tota Gopinath and just disappeared. So that's how Srimati Radharani, like in the form of Gadadhar Pandit, ended her pastimes in this material world. So like we chant his name in our the Panch Tattva Mahamantra, and because he is none other than Srimati Radharani herself, so we need to so that's why he's a very important personality in Gauri Vaishnava, that we should always pray for him and pray for Srimati Radharani's mercy. So that's all I want to add here, Prabhuji.
Wow, that was an excellent report. So Lord Chaitanya disappeared into the Tota Gopinath deity, and Gadadhar Pandit did the same. Is that right?
No, Prabhuji. Gadadhar Pandit disappeared into the deity of Tota Gopinath after serving 1 year after Mahaprabhu disappeared.
But Mahaprabhu disappeared in the same way, isn't it?
I am not sure about that, Prabhuji. You can enlighten us on that.
I think so. I think when Mahaprabhu disappeared, he went into the Tota Gopinath temple and never came out again, isn't it, Amrita Sundari? So same.
There are two different records. Some say he was locked into the Gambhira and then he just disappeared. Nobody knows how. And some accounts say that he entered Tota Gopinath. So.
But that Gadadhar was in. It seems like if the Tota Gopinath one is to believe, then Gadadhar believed that, and maybe he's just following.
Would be.
Actually, when we went to Jagannath Puri, they show for the Mangal Aarti, they show the knees of the Tota Gopinath deity, and there's a mark in there, and the priest says that the Mahaprabhu merged inside at the knees, and there was never more after that. There has no record.
Interesting. Well, that was a great report. Anybody have any questions for Rakesh? That was well done. Well done.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. It's all mercy of the Vaishnavas. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Great job.
Rakesh Prabhu, very comprehensive report.
Very good.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Govinda Day. May we hear about Bhaktivinode Thakur, whose appearance day it is.
You are on mute, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. a daunting task I have to condense the life of a saint as great as Bhaktivinode Thakur into 10 to 12 minutes. It's certainly not possible. I will, with your blessings and prayers, give it my best shot. I'm very happy to have had this opportunity, because I have wondered about Bhaktivinode Thakur, because I know that in the British government, he served with great distinction as a magistrate. He had a very distinguished business career that I'll get to in a moment. But of course, much more important is that, and it is very appropriate, I think, that we are honoring, remembering Bhaktivinode Thakur on Father's Day, because he is the father of the father of the father. If there were not Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, we would not have Srila Prabhupada. But if we did not have Bhaktivinode Thakur, we literally would never have had Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Bhaktivinode is the seminal recreator of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, because it had really dissipated after the deaths of the 6 Goswamis. There were still people that were practicing, but it had dwindled into a number of different sects, and there was not a strong core at the time Bhaktivinode Thakur was born of anyone that was preaching the mission of Lord Chaitanya. That is his a great accomplishment, his great contribution to each one of us. He was born in 1838. He died in 1914. He was born in Birnagar, about 100 miles north of Calcutta. He was the third of 6 children, and this is something that I did not know. For the first 11 years of his life, he lived in his mother's father's, his maternal grandfather's palace. He grew up in a palace for 11 years, a very, very sumptuous, lavish, material lifestyle. And here he's being set up because he was very, very well educated. He was very learned and kind of introspective by nature. And what happened was, in the space of just a couple of years, when he was about 11, 3 of his brothers died of cholera. His father died of cholera, and then his grandfather died, and his mother inherited this palace that they had been living in. And it turned out that there was a whole bunch of debt associated with that palace that nobody knew about. And so he went from a life of great bounty. He had all of the material comforts. And in a very, very short period of time, his mother was struggling to raise him. And they lived in poverty for 2 or 3 years was his life circumstance. And according to what I read, that led him to a period of great introspection. He said, what was the point of all of that sumptuous joy that I was experiencing or thought I was experiencing? It was all reduced to nothing. So what happened when he was about 14? He was taken in by his uncle who lived in Calcutta. His uncle was very prominent in literary circles and was the editor and publisher of a great literary journal. And Bhaktivinode, his given name, by the way, was Kedarnath Datta. Kedarnath Datta. He was born into the Datta family. His parents were, an important thing I left out, his parents were pious people, but they were not Vaishnavas. He did not grow up like his son, who we know, and like Srila Prabhupada in a Vaishnava family. He was exposed to good morals and good teachings, but he had to figure this all out for himself. And this started when he moved in at the age of 14, and he lived for about 6 years until he went to college in the home of his uncle in Calcutta. And he was exposed to really the kind of the intellectual elite of India at the time that were residing there, and was very, very well educated. He took a great interest in philosophy. He went to the Hindu college at the age of 18, and he studied all of the Western philosophers, and he read the Bible, he read the Quran, he tried to find at the age of 22, his great quest was to find a copy of Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. He could not find anywhere a copy of either of these works to read. It took him 8 years, and finally he found copies of those foundational texts when he was 30 years old. He had a job after he got out of college as an English teacher. He did very well there, but eventually recognized that he was not going to be able to enough money to support his very large family on that income. And so he pursued a career in government service, and he was very, very highly regarded by the British as someone who was absolutely impeccable in his work ethic and in his integrity, his honesty, and also his capacity. So he served in a number of different positions, but ended up as a civil magistrate, effectively a judge whose job it was to maintain for the British peace, law, and order he worked in Bengal, Orissa, and Bihar. And over the course of his career, which was about 35 years in his business career, his professional career, he lived in about 20 different locations. So I mentioned that he had a large family that he needed to provide for. What an understatement. Talk about a father. He was married young at the age of 12. He had his first child when he was 22, but then his first wife died. He remarried, and this woman must have been a true saint. Bhagavati Devi gave birth to 13 children. So he had a total of 14 children that he raised. And the seventh of those children was Bimala Prasad, who became Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So as I mentioned, here's the most important part, is what's important to us. When he started on this quest to figure out what is the meaning of life, there wasn't any organized Gaudiya Vaishnava organization that he could become part of to receive those teachings. There was no organized sampradaya. The whole movement that started by Lord Chaitanya had fragmented, and the Advaita school, impersonalist teachings were very prominent at the time. There was also a strong belief, apparently, and this was flowed from a criticism of the British, that Krishna was sort of a questionable character in his morality. Things that, that's the reason why you have to read the first 9 cantos before you read the 10th canto. So these are things that he was dealing with as he read and studied. Finally, when he was 30 years old, after 8 years, he gets a copy of Srimad Bhagavatam. He gets Chaitanya Charitamrita. He read them many, many, many times. And he finally, on reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, he had revelation. It was just, he had this realization, this is the true path. He had studied Christianity very closely. He had studied really every potential way of belief. And this is where he landed. And from the age of about 30, he just decided this was the meaning of his life and this is what he was going to do. In his government service, he got assigned when he was 32 years old to serve at Puri. The temple had been neglected for some time. He energized the temple. He became the temple manager. He started a program of preaching and bringing people together to teach. And his life is just staggering. It's overwhelming. I'm going to go through what he did, sort of bullet point style, but you could spend a day talking about each of these things. So 1880, not until when he was 42 years old, he took initiation. He had come under a lot of criticism that he was purporting to be a preacher at the time. Of course, all this time, he's got 14 kids at home and he's got a full-time job. Holy smoke. But he was under criticism. So he and his wife took initiation when he was 42 years old. And it wasn't until he was 42 that he gave up eating meat. He had been raised as a meat eater. In 1881, when he was 43 years old, he began the Sajjana Toshani, a magazine that Srila Prabhupada later made contributions to while he was still living in India. That magazine means the source of pleasure of the devotees. And that was regularly published beginning in 1881. He started a big organization to collect and to write and to print and publish as many Vaishnava texts as they possibly could. That was a main part of his ministry. He discovered Lord Chaitanya's birthplace. That's a whole story in and of itself. And he started what they called the Nama Hata, which was a traveling group of devotees that went all around India, and they would preach, they would distribute prasadam, and they would do kirtan. He really took from kind of out of nothing, he started to create the engine that eventually turned into ISKCON 2 generations later. I think everyone knows he wrote many, many, many bhajans, some of which we're familiar with. Jaya, Jaya Gora Chanda, Arati Kosopa. That's one of his. His whole vision was to solidify, strengthen, and move forward, pressing the message of Lord Chaitanya. He was, once he got the message, just absolutely unstoppably committed to spreading this word. And the main way that he did it, that hasn't even been touched on, was in his writing. He had a tremendous gift. Krishna had gifted him with the ability to write and to communicate. I read one place, he actually wrote his first poem when he was 2 years old, kind of like the Mozart of poetry. He wrote a lot of poems. He wrote over 100 books. He wrote numerous magazine articles. He was just on the move constantly. He never rested in his service for the Lord. In the course of his government work and his spiritual activities, he was fluent in Bengali, of course, in English, in Sanskrit. Also, he was fluent in Urdu and Persian. For some reason, those were languages he needed to know fluently in order to function in his governmental post. He wrote a biography at the age, an autobiography at the age of 56 at the urging of another one of his sons. And his literary contribution is just staggering and actually unparalleled. He retired from government in 1894, moved to Mayapur with his family, a large entourage. I guess most of them were emancipated by then. He saw the distribution of books, not surprisingly, as the key to distributing the message of Lord Chaitanya. He sent books often to the West. He sent books to Ralph Waldo Emerson, to professors at Oxford and at other universities. So he actually had the original vision that this is a message that should be heard not only in India, but should be spread to the West. That was a very distinct part of his vision of how to spread Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So, I mean, I'm overwhelmed, truly overwhelmed at the capacity and the energy of Bhaktivinode Thakur. He did this. He was a householder. He did all of what he did while holding down a full-time job, at least for the first 30 years, while he was very active in his preaching. He retired from government when he was in his late 50s. He was a magazine editor. He was the publisher and writer of numerous books. I think most of you have probably heard this before, but so it invites the question, how did he do all of this? Well, this sounds a lot like Srila Prabhupada. Think about what we know about Srila Prabhupada's work ethic for the Lord. I'm just going to read this. It's actually a footnote out of Wikipedia, but I think it's correct. Bhaktivinode would go to sleep at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and he would get up at 10 o'clock, light his oil lamp, and write for 6 hours. So 2 hours of sleep, 6 hours of writing. Then he would take a, I would add, well-deserved 30-minute nap. Then he'd get up at 4:30. He would chant japa for 2.5 hours. Then he would have some breakfast. He would deal with correspondence, do some personal study. Oh my goodness, he has time for personal study. And he would receive visitors. And then from 10 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, he went and he did his job with a 1-hour break for lunch. He would sit in court. He would hear the cases that had been assigned, and he would resolve these cases, and he would make written decisions on each of them. But this is exhausting. Just thinking about Bhaktivinode Thakur, it's staggering. It's overwhelming. And then he would come home. He would take his supper, his prasad. He'd go to bed at 8, get up at 10, and he'd do it all over again. And he had that kind of schedule for about 20 years. When he retired from government, he had more time to devote to devotional activities. So sorry to take so long with this. As you can see, this is an amazing person we should know more about. 3 takeaways from the life of Bhaktivinode. Number 1 is you can get a late start and still be a very, very significant and devoted, and you can be a perfect Vaishnava even with a late start. Number 2, he set the pattern for Srila Prabhupada. I mean, I think we've all stood in awe of the kind of work ethic that we know that Prabhupada had, but he knew about Bhaktivinode Thakur. And once someone does it, I don't know where Bhaktivinode got his inspiration from, but there was already a pattern set for Srila Prabhupada, which is not to minimize anything that Srila Prabhupada did, but he makes it possible. And I guess the third takeaway is we can all do a lot more than we think we're capable of doing, because really the sky is the limit. And what an inspiration to receive. There are Vaishnavas that have paved the way, and our little contributions we should try to make a little bit bigger. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That was amazing, Govinda. Amazingly vivacious and animated. Does anybody have any questions for Govinda, Dave? I remember just skimming his biography also. You'd read, and he there's so many accomplishments, and as you're reading, the number of his accomplishments, his publications, his activities, and you just sort of think now he's old, and then in the middle of that it says his second son was born, and then you read and he does this and this and this and this and the other thing. Well, he must be in his 60s by now, and then it says his fifth son was born, and it's like. And then you read and read and read, and so many accomplishments. And then it says he asked for permission to retire, but the British wouldn't let him retire. So you think he must be 60 or 70. And then his sixth son was born, you know? And it's like he accomplished the work of 10 men, literally. And then when he finally did retire, he was only in his 50s. One story also I picked up on was that he was in Puri, employed by the British, and I guess he basically was accountable to the British and not so much to the king. But obviously, if you rub the king the wrong way, that's not going to bode well for you. So he caught the king out for having embezzled a large sum from the temple. And he forced the king to pay it back by sponsoring the Bog offerings for like a couple of years. And that cost the king an enormous amount of money. Essentially, it was a way of returning all the money that he'd embezzled. And so the king had it in for Bhaktivinode Thakur, and he hired a tantric black artist to kill Bhaktivinode with a spell. Bhaktivinode wasn't killed, but it was the king's own son who died as a result of that tantric black arts.
Wow.
And that was just an amazing report. Rick, anybody want to say anything, Govinda, or ask any question about it?
That was amazing, Govinda Prabhu. It was amazing. So much. And especially you are being an attorney, I can see how you were inspired by the whole thing. And the schedule of Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur is just mind-blowing. It's just like if all of us have even do a minute portion of it, so much progress we can make. So thank you for all your research, and I can see the limelight in you.
So you completed the daunting task very nicely. And you excelled.
Yeah. There was a lot of peer appreciation in that report as well.
Yeah. If all he had right bhajans, he would be remembered as a great contribution to the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. And that's only a small segment. So many things. How do you write 100 books? I mean, literally, he didn't live that many years. Just amazing. Just amazing.
Jai Ho. Every evening, Kiva Jaya Jaya Go. Because of Bhaktivinode, we invoke Shiva, we invoke Lord Brahma, we invoke all the demigods, we invoke Vrindavan, the spiritual world, every evening at Sundar Arti, through the mercy of Bhaktivinode Thakur. That was just what he was personally realizing in his own home. Rakesh, would you mind, can we hear the report on Srivas Thakur next week? Would that be something you can do?
Yes, Prabhuji, I can do that next week.
Okay, we'll save it like a special bonus, like dessert for next week.
Sure, Prabhuji. And Prabhuji, I have to take a leave now, but before that, I want to pray and request all of you, if you can chant for this little one. It's her birthday today. It's her 5th birthday. So if you can bless her, Prabhuji.
Oh, wow.
Let's unmute everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna to you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Rakesh, you took the Father's Day literally.
Actually, when she was born in 2015, it was actually Father's Day. And when she was born in 2011, it was actually Mother's Day that day. So we both are blessed. So she was born on
Wow.
Mother's Day and she is born on Father's Day. So no fight in our house.
Also born on the day of Bhaktivinode and Gadadhar Pandit.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And thank you for contributing. Closing Kirtan. Ishan.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare
Oh, you made quite the twosome. Yeah, and you're getting.
Thank you.
Oh, and you give full. Sean gives Ishan full-throated backup there. We went live on Facebook about 5 minutes into the presentation. We didn't include, unfortunately, it didn't occur to me to begin in the beginning, so we omitted. We didn't include Govinda Dev's Kirtan. But if you want to review the excellent reports by Rakesh and by Govinda Dev, it's available there on Caru, Utah, and I'll share it just after we finish here. I'll share it with Hare Krishna Temple in Salt Lake and Sri Sri Radha Krishna if you want to review it. Perhaps it might encourage other people to join us too. But we're very happy with the way we've been meeting, very happy with our current group. We're certainly churning the nectar every week. Gives me a big boost. I hope it does the same for you. So any last comments? Otherwise, we'll adjourn and look forward next week to more Kirtan, more Katha, Rakesh's report on Srivas Thakur, and whatever else Krishna has in mind. Any final comments from anybody? Thank you all. Vanchikapatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha. Pavanebhyo, Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna.
Govinda ki jai ho.
Jai ho.